caution with exposing patients to foods that are raw, not properly cooked, not properly washed. Yeah? Fruits and vegetables we think is always healthy, but if it's a fruit that's cut and open and left open, it may not be adequate for that patient because it may have a little bit of extra bacterial growth that may, if they're compromised with immunity, it may not be appropriate for them. So one of the rules we do, if they're in doubt, if it's moldy, if it's a little bit off and you're not sure, you should throw it out. So these are some of the things that we consider when we have these patients, right? And we always try to make sure that they have somebody with them who is a nutrition expert to help to guide them through the side effects that they may be experiencing. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I think I went 8.5 minutes.
We won't tell.
Given that Ms. Phillips has to leave, anybody have any questions for her? And looking at from the hospital perspective, in relationship to how to manage cancer, or post or during chemotherapy. So.
No, just wanted to thank you because a lot of people don't hear that part of a presentation. What you're doing before, during, and after diagnosis and going through the treatment. So it's a rare education, and a lot of people don't get that. Okay, but they want to understand it because they're dealing with it, and they have family members or loved ones who are dealing with it. So they don't get that part. So you're bringing a very important piece to the table.
Thank you. And you know, I understand sometimes just the struggles of the family members. You know, you want to do your best. You want to give the meals. You want to prepare the food as how, you know, they love it. It won't work. And understand that culturally, we tend to associate the food with bringing love and showing love. You know, it changes a lot, right? And it can cause a lot of frustration. Then we think about family members who are listening to things that they hear in general. You know, this is healthy for you, this is great for you, but it's not great for you in this current situation. You know, sometimes we accept, lots of patients think that the basics that you provide, basic information, it can't be right. You know, it's too simple. You know, and they think that something a little bit more complex is what they need. It's not necessarily so. And it's just a lot of going through and being very practical, you know, and finding solutions that are feasible for each patient at every stage. All right, thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, but I do have to leave. Thank you. All right.
So I'm not sure the order of things. The next aspect of the presentation is to present health and cancer from a global perspective. So I'm going to allow Ms. Du Bois to go and then present her part, and then we'll, and then Ms. Stevenson will go, and then I'll close up. But this is an opportunity for us to have discussions. So this is not, otherwise we'll be sitting in front of the podium. This is why we have the roundtable concept, so that we could really talk. This is all you ever wanted to know, but if we're to ask type of atmosphere. So make it happen.
Okay, so I stole some props. So it was not because I was hungry, although I am. It was props. I was going to focus on one topic because this was related with a foundation that's very active in Cameroon. So I was going to focus on aflatoxin. And so one toxin that is naturally present in food that we know has a direct link with cancer. But I'd like to, since it's a small group, I'd like to bring it back to maybe a slightly more general discussion. And what I do, I work at the University of Maryland and teach really governments from around the world how to test food for contaminants, microbiology and chemistry. And the idea, there was many discussions about funding, so I'll talk a little bit about why would the government of the U.S. fund that? Because we import food from everywhere. So, did you eat something imported this morning? Mm-hmm. Most likely. Very few people can eat only locally. funny enough, when I had a slide, if you go to a developing country, the poor eat local. If you go to a developed country, the rich eat local. So the way we have expanded our relationship with food is very, very different. We've made it international. Your food has traveled more than any of you or me. And it comes from areas that we have really no or very little control on how these things are produced. However, it seems to be working, because guess what? We've never lived to be this old as a population. So it must. So to bridge with the nutrition discussion, we have brought in enough benefits that whatever might be negative in the new way that we deal with food in a trade perspective, it really outbalances any negatives. The outbreaks of foodborne illnesses in the U.S. in recent years have all been caused by U.S. produced foods. We've not had outbreaks caused by internationally produced foods. However, we import our most dangerous food. What I call dangerous for effect is what is usually called risky food. So the highest risk of causing illness is for foods that are not cooked and for foods that have a high risk of microbial contamination during production. So it's going to be your fruits and vegetables that are grown with manure, because if this was not fermented properly before it got used as manure, you just now have pretty much poop on your food. So think organic for a second. That's why you wash organic. But organic's very well controlled within the USDA organic nomination here in the US. Not so around the world. Organic in China doesn't have the same definition as organic in the United States. So all of that means now we have a food source that is really based on how we interact with the governments of other countries. They are responsible for seeing the farmers, fishermen, fish farmers, cattle ranchers, name it, chicken producers, all use processes and procedures that keep the food safe. You don't do that with regulation only. We have one new regulation in the United States called the Food Safety Modernization Act. And what that rule said, it was signed by Obama in 2011, and what it said was, we're giving power to FDA to go everywhere around the world where we import food from and act as in do inspections, request to see paperwork from these companies, go look at the fields and see how things are done. But we didn't give more money to FDA. So it's not like they're going to suddenly have enough staff to go look at every field that grows strawberries in Mexico. So we really have to do this by engaging other governments and saying, okay, we like your food and we'd like to continue to import it. And we know it makes a big difference in your country because that exported food brings between 2 and 10 times more money to the farmer. So it brings some farmers out of poverty when they're able to join like co-ops that have enough volume then to be able to export. But we want to make sure that that food is not going to cause problems here. And you've heard of Montezuma's revenge, or everybody's sick when they visit India and all these things. So what happens if you bring the food from India here? If everybody's sick when they visit India? Well, in theory, we should all be sick. And we could be, but we're not. So what do you have an idea what we import from India in very large amounts? Spices. How do we use spices in the United States? We sprinkle them on top of our food. Sometimes we'll cook it in the dish, but the red pepper jar is right on the table when you eat. They don't in India. That gets boiled for 2 hours. So if there was something in it that could make you sick, it wouldn't make anyone in India sick because they boil it for 2 hours. That's the way they prepare food. That's the way their food is traditionally. It's not the way we use it here. So part of the reasons that we have to go and impose our standards is we're going to eat these foods the way we've always eaten these foods. We're not going to change the way we eat it just because it comes from somewhere else. So now we have to very diplomatically go and tell people, well, you have to do it our way because we don't want to be sick. And our only incentive is if we continue to not be sick from your food, we will continue to buy it. So you will make money, and therefore your farmers will slowly come out of poverty and all these things. So it's a big, it's a really, really big topic now. When to end on a personal note, when I studied food science and technology in the 90s, that ages me, it was not popular. People were asking, what do you do in class? They wanted to cook. And nutrition, I'm sure you got similar comments, learn to cook. And I would tell them, no, we do microbiology, chemistry, engineering, all these things, because when you process food, you have to make sure all of that works out. It flows through the pipe, and it's good when it comes out, and it's the right color, and it tastes what people are going to eat. Well, nowadays, we can't find enough people with a food science background, because food has become so central in our trade. And now my really last example, but it's a funny one to make you realize how trade works. So we have some free trade agreements, and we have some sometimes arguments about some things we like, some things we don't like. In the United States, the government is not allowed to put a rule on, for example, food, if there is not a way to fix that problem. So you cannot say, we no longer want peppers that are, not the right shade of green to be sold because they're not nutritionally as good. That's it. Then there has to be a risk assessment done. What is the risk? Well, the nutrition may not be as great. Okay, if you pull it off the market, what are people going to eat in place of that thing you're pulling off? Well, maybe other peppers, but maybe not vegetables at all. And how are you going to offer peppers at a cost that people can afford without completely destroying the industry? So we have to do that. Others don't. EU, for example, the European Union, can have preferences put into regulations. So they can say, we're not able right now to find scientific evidence that this is really a health problem, but we do not want this type of hormone in our pork. Therefore, we will not import any pork from the United States because that is allowed in your production. They can do that. What happens then? Well, it's actually what happened then. Then the United States turned around and said, okay, we're going to do a complaint at the World Trade Organization. We're going to have a retaliatory tariff measure, and that is why you have an extra tax on imported cars from Europe, because they don't want pork from the United States. So the implications of the food trade are very, very broad, and the health aspect of the food is always the central point. But we have to realize how much it changes everybody's lives. If we don't have enough supply, we cause food insecurity by not accepting food because we think it may not be as good as we would like it to be. We've not solved the problem. We've created a new problem. So it's something we have to balance. And in the African context, it's the hardest thing with the aflatoxin that I was going to use as the example, because now you're asking a mother to decide whether she is going to feed her child a product that might be contaminated or not feed the child at all. How do you make that decision? Here we don't have to make it. Other people decide for us if it comes on the market or if it doesn't. That's all.
Thank you.
I can speak for hours, but, I think that's only on 8 minutes.
Thank you.
So we'll go. You have a question?
Yeah, but if you guys want to go ahead, then we can.
No. You go ahead and ask your question.
I was just going to, what is the government doing about the chemicals that have been banned in, let's say, the developed countries
Yes.
that are still being allowed to be used all over Africa?
Yes.
And what is the government doing about the chemicals that have been banned in, let's say, the developed countries that are still being allowed to be used all over Africa?
Yes.
Example, Cameroon, in the banana and pineapple plantations, and you have the dough stuff, which is brought here all the time. What is the government doing to make sure that that stuff doesn't get used? I know it's not coming from the U.S. Most of that stuff, the chemicals are coming from France.
They can come from a lot of places.
Of course, the government, they're going to say, quote unquote, it meets the S standard. But in America and Europe, it's banned because of the carcinogens and the stuff.
Yes.
What are we doing to stop that?
Well, it's exactly the problem that I was talking about. Are you going to prevent the farmers from farming because they don't have access to the other pesticides? And access is not necessarily that they're not important in the country. They can be too expensive. So you would have to close the farm in order to, close so many farms in order to block the use of the pesticide that they can use, that they can afford to use. So it's the way it is currently in the world, by restricting how they can sell these products, it does encourage farmers to use the right things. But it's very largely a matter of education. So the governments are actually investing a lot of money, and the U.S. invests that through USAID, so we hope it doesn't get cut too much. But U.S. aid gives money, pretty shotgun approach, all around the world to try to educate about why you should use some pesticides on certain commodities and not on other commodities. There are pesticides that are maybe more dangerous, but they degrade fast. So they're not going to be in the food at the time of harvest. So those lists are complicated. You can use this, but only on these crops. And there's political reasons too. In the United States, it has to be registered in order to be used. Not necessarily in all countries. In most countries, there's no registration process. So the government is doing education, largely, to the governments and to the farmers directly, at very different levels of education.
We'll talk after. So they have some now that you don't even have to clear the farm. You just spray chemical and it kills all the grass and everything. And they're encouraging the farmers to use that.
And I think part of the concern is what is that doing to the soil and what is that doing to the nutrients?
Because it is affecting the people using it very badly.
And there's a challenging agent is connected to the nutrient in the soil, connecting to food, and increasing the risk of cancer, like Ms. Phillips was talking about. And that is going to creating such a level of disparity in health that, in one hand, the people is in need of the food, and the other hand is then they are almost forced to participate in a process of farming for the sake of survival. Because a lot of it is not necessarily because they cannot afford it. It's because the politics that's involved to forcing them to purchase a product, knowing that it's almost like sometimes if you look at the literature, they're using some part of Sub-Saharan Africa or in India as a testing agent for some of the chemical that they're using to see, like, okay, let's see what's going to happen to them in 20 years ago. Are their babies going to come out looking like, come out with 3 legs? But, I'm making a joke, but the reality is which population is mostly being impacted by such by that kind of behavior. If you look at Gandhi's later life, not prior to his previous work, but in later life, as he had the awakening, he talked about the global village, how the impact of industrial nation and technology has it's going to create such a curse into the environment. It's actually destroying the village, the global village. That village that has no boundaries. So look at who's on the table. And because of that, if we do not, all of us, take responsibility to participate in the process, to talk about the consequences of what this is doing to the culture, to the food, to the community, we are going to be impacted. Like you buying product from Mexico. 70% of the fruits and vegetables we get from Mexico. And how they're producing those products, what's going on with the fruits and vegetables. So all those factors are actually going to create such health issues that if we do not have this conversation, this is bigger than what we disabled could handle. We're talking about not just cancer, we're talking about diabetes, we're talking about cardiovascular disease, we're talking about all those components that if we change the way that we eat, I know Ms. Phillips talked about, well, we got to change, that's from the clinical perspective, but if we look at just the fruits and vegetables, if we change our life and just eat fruits and vegetables, some of the disease we're not going to see. So it's really like, I could talk about this all day. Let's get to the next. Go ahead.
I think what was really interesting is that when you, like you were saying before, when you have these pesticides that hit the soil because it kills bugs, so you kill microorganisms in the soil because they're bugs, right? And then these microorganisms don't create natural minerals and acids in the soil. So then the plant suffers, and then you have pests that naturally kill the weeds, right? But what can't you, if that cycle happens in that direction, can't you reverse it the other way? Put the humic, fulvic acids and minerals in the soil, have them replenish the microorganisms, have the plant become a lot stronger, and therefore become naturally resistant to insects and bugs and stuff like that. I don't understand why there's not like a connection between like farmers and education in terms of like plant biology and stuff like that, where they can see more of a long-term investment rather than a short-term investment. And I think people will be more, I think that education will help everyone like long-term scale, because when you start depleting these minerals, you don't have just macro minerals, you have like a whole bunch of micro minerals that we haven't even explored yet in terms of what it does on a health level for the human body. You just substitute them with these macro nutrients and expect for it to replace what the human being was naturally designed to eat. And I think that, I don't know, I think that's an interesting subject. I wish people would explore that more.
Well, I just wanted to add that this exists in the United States. It's called extension. It's being developed around the world to various degrees, but that is what made land-grant universities in the United States. It is helping farmers. Nowadays, it's got a much more varied, including nutrition, mission. But it started as help the farmers. So there is one university in every state, two in every state of the South, that has that as a mission and receives federal dollars every year to do that.
Nice.
So
I think UDC is one, University of Maryland is one. Yeah.
yeah, the University Eastern Shore is the second one in Maryland.
So I have like 30 seconds. What?
No,
Every question's 30 seconds.
Okay, next. Who's the next speaker? Okay.
So how many minutes do I have? It's
8.
12:05 now. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. My focus, first, I'm Temporary Stevenson, founder and CEO of Wanda Women Advancing Nutrition, Dietetics, and Agriculture, and also founder of Native Soul Kitchen, which focuses around culinary nutrition education. So my perspective that I'll be coming from today is hence why I created these entities, to fill in a gap of something that I did not see exist in the myriad of positions that I've had from federal, local government, university, and in the community. So the first piece of, for me, healthy lifestyle is not simply what can you as a consumer do, but you as a citizen in your city, your municipality do, in terms of being able to be educated about the issues, to advocate and change and create a healthier, better food system. My other role is serving as a mayor appointee on the DC Food Policy Council, where we focus on local food economy. However, within that context, health is something that is not intrinsically thought of and therefore has to be advocated for. So I'm the only person with a nutrition background on it. So I'm dealing with David Goliath battles even within our own council when it comes to, well, let's just focus on the bottom line profit, but if it's recognizing that health is a big component of our GDP, if we don't focus on healthy food access, we find ourselves in a conundrum and a vicious cycle of looking to use those resources to address the cancer, the diabetes, the heart disease, and et cetera. And therefore, needing to have people like you in the room to champion and why, understanding why politicians, why policymakers always say citizens must be in the room to speak up, whether they're organized as a Apache Foundation or American Cancer or university or a group of student bodies to provide those testimonies to say, I like what she's saying, we need to support that, and your votes matter. because that's how they get answered to. So my whole focus today is about the importance of the education advocacy to afford you the right to have a healthy lifestyle, and those who play a role in that when you're not at the table will impact your ability to have a healthy lifestyle. So having created WANDA, which really focuses about how do we create a pipeline and a platform of a new generation of women and girls to lead in creating a healthier food system. It was understanding that in this global society with transportation, hop on a plane, easy to get access to Africa and other parts around the world, how do we find the commonality in this global society where what is happening on the other side of the Atlantic equally influences what happens here. So the point that Janet raised in terms of food safety is an example of the ease and access to food. How many people have put food in the luggage, right? and why USDA, has a whole foreign ag section dedicated to that aspect of protecting our borders of foreign food, but at the same time we have restaurants who have these exotic high-priced, food items that people who are affluent can purchase. So there are some loopholes, obviously, in the system to allow some things to come and others not. And so for us, it's about how our communities, in terms of even our universities, preparing for the new NCDs that are impacting the continent. Right now, NCD Free, which is a NGO, they say that between diabetes and heart disease, it's outpacing AIDS and TB and malaria combined. Therefore, how do we equip the continent to prepare for what's happening? And cancer is right along with it. So right now, the focus of WHO is all about looking at how to even determine what the exact numbers are of caseloads to even know what to fight against. So having traveled most recently over the past 12 months to Kano in Nigeria, the teaching hospital, they have an MPH nutrition program as a great case study that has been body with a nutrition background. So when you think about the idea of sparking inspiration in a student to say, hey, I want to be that nutrition leader for my community, the students basically, as I was told by one of the professors, didn't take on any nutrition projects. So you have a program not properly fitted with leadership in order to motivate a new crop of students to come on board to be those professionals to fight NCDs and prepare for a new nutrition transition hitting northern Nigeria, which is in contrast to what is happening in the south with the overburden of overnutrition. They have been properly equipped. There's more Western influence, and therefore you find a lot of similarities. You will find cases of childhood obesity easily, particularly among boarding schools where parents are affluent, dealing with a middle income country issue, but then you have just a few hours away, hop a plane to Yola, and you're dealing with famine in Madagari and other places. And so this is what's grappling with a lot of the countries, that you have this dual issue. We have it here, but we choose not to highlight these things because it's not great PR if you hit the Appalachian Trail and find food insecurity, or right here in Maryland, for instance. So how do we raise this awareness that, wow, within one country, within one community, we have this issue of food insecurity that really is the bottom line to this, that we need to educate our children, and why we end up creating a new series called Where's Wanda? And what it focuses on is about creating really the first made in Africa character, a girl who uses her magic apron to travel to the continent, learn about the female farmers, learn about their local foods, and how do they help heal the community. Because part of, when we talk about food and nutrition, there's been a long negative history when it comes to African food. If you look at the 3-set volume of Lost Crops of Africa by the National Academy of Sciences, they paint them as forbidden foods or hunger foods. And so it's only until most recently the African Development Bank launched a big initiative this month around gastronomy and the creative sector around food. And so it's taking on a new dimension that Africa and the food rising will be the new frontier, as we've seen with the emerging markets in India, as well as in other parts of Asia and Latin America. So it only comes naturally that food will rise with the economies on the continent as well. So how do we make that connection between nutrition? How do we provide those opportunities to train that next set of not only entrepreneurs but advocates and leaders in the community to understand that their African foods can be medicine, and not only medicine for the continent but for the diaspora, and having curriculum that needs to be reformed, mindsets needing to be reformed to take in this new narrative around the foods, and funds invested into that, either through USAID, USDA, State Department. There's multiple agencies who touch on this issue. They say 50 agencies within the U.S. touch on food. So all those are potential streams of income, linking that to health issues that can fund. How do we come about creating new book series, new ed tech platforms, new multimedia landscapes to engage a generation to start recognizing and seeing that ag can be cool again. So I'm just going to end and open that for questions.
Question? Yes. What's my name? Oh, it's lunchtime?
Yes, it is lunchtime.
We have
Speaking
to
of
eat?
food,
Well,
I'm not a
you of all
breatharian.
people.
You said
I'm not a breatharian. People who just live on breathing.
I do have a question.
Yes.
You were talking about tech platforms for learning.
Yes.
How's that working for you? Because I can tell you it's not working for me at all.
It's a new frontier, honestly. I think part of, as a new NGO, we're in the new round of pitching in competitions, and so everything is tech. And it's like, if you are not tech, you're whack. You're like in the Stone Ages, and so it's like, it can either be, tech, low tech, WhatsApp, SMS. That's still a form of tech. And understanding your population, who you're engaging with, that may be an appropriate form of tech versus something that may use up too much bandwidth that's not possible when you don't have unlimited data in some countries. So I think tech, differs in context related to culture and access, and it's not the same as in the U.S. context, I would say.
Even in the U.S., it's, I can't remember what the statistics is, but it's appallingly small how many people actually finish any kind of a training that they start on.
Yeah, ADHD is real.
It's in the 10%. And you're in the micro-learning environment now where you're pitching 5-minute things to people because they can't stay longer than that.
Exactly. It's
It's
no finishing novels. That's just so in Stone Ages. But I do have my card here if anyone wants to stay in contact as well.
Right? And, in support of not being a breatharian, this is where we end the panel discussion and how we go to get a chance to eat.
Thank you. Oh, that's an APHIS issue. That's not a safety issue.
I wanted to, it would have been good if this time for lunch, if I try to introduce
The meats, because it would still have an animal meat that is
Excuse me.
Excuse me. For one person, it's ridiculous, but there are.
We have one person going to do a very quick presentation because it's very important. He's talking about
conducive to eating.
It's conducive to the eating aspect. So if you can
burning
listen,
calories that I don't have.
3 minutes.
Sometime, I'm hoping we can have a conversation because I might be able to, I have got like, yeah, we might be able to work together.
So,
Especially in the media idea that you have. Okay? All right.
Stink bugs.
You are.
You live in this area? Shipment. They don't know if it's
check
Baltimore
that out.
Port or.
This is contemporary fruit. This is contemporary fruit. It's been known for quite some time, for about maybe like 60 years, but it wasn't documented until the 1970s. It's exploding in Europe, but it's not here. What the contemporary fruit is, it's the extract. It's a protein-based sweetener, or it's considered a sweetener in Europe. And this protein sweetener has no side effects, and it's 3,000 times sweeter than sugar. It's regarded as the most potent sweetening agent known to mankind, and it's perfect for diabetics. And on your tongue is perceived as 100,000 times sweeter than sugar. So about 1 gram in proportion to 1,000 times sweeter than sugar, probably equal to like 6.6 pounds of sugar per gram. Yeah, that's the gist of that. Yeah, only a few drops in a beverage, and you can totally replace sugar. Any other form of sweetener tastes extremely good. It's extremely sweet. It'll shock you. Few drops. If you put too many drops, your beverage is ruined because it's super intense. So if you wanted to make something super Kool-Aid sweet, you can, and have none of the setbacks that sugar does. So you can replace anything you want. You can also, it's also heat stable. You can bake with it. Yeah, in its powder form, but this is the liquid form, FDA approved. Talk to them directly, sent them email, see how it's regulated. They say it's under GRAS, but it's not exactly regulated. The problem is with this is that it's already found, you've already eaten this in some of your supplements and stuff like that, and nutritional supplements, candy bars, and chewing gums. The problem is it's not set aside or available as a condiment for the average consumer. So in Europe, it's starting to grow, but I can ask a person every single day of the year and not have one person who's ever heard of Dalmatin protein. So
How does it compare with stevia?
it tastes way better. You want to try it?
Yes, stevia's awful.
We could try it right now. Yeah.
It's very sweet. I tried it. It's very sweet.
Oh yeah, you got the chance to try it?
It's very sweet.
There we go. So you can take some cups.
What about gastrointestinal distress? Things like that?
There's no side effects. There's no reported side effects. It's been studied for a long time.
How long has it been studied?
For like over 50 years. Yeah, it's been studied for a long time.
What's metabolized?
It's protein. Yeah, it's a plant-based protein. I kind of zoomed through it real quick, but it's just a plant-based protein. So you don't metabolize it like you do a carbohydrate. So it doesn't spike blood sugar or anything.
And if you think of the tobacco lobby is powerful, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The tobacco lobby is Neanderthal compared to the sugar lobby. Oh, yeah.
Maybe just like report, you can give it to everybody or something like that.
What about
Pass it down.
What about GMO?
No, it's organic. It is. There were some issues I was having trying to get the pure form.
Very good.
Yeah.
If it's a protein, how is it heat stable?
I don't know how heat stable is a protein. There's other forms. They're called what's called dalmatins. You can open that just one. Actually, I have a bottle that's already open. You don't have to open them. I just wanted to show you guys. I think I have a bottle.
Is this your company?
Yeah.
You don't have an address on the bottle.
No, not yet.
I don't think you can commercialize without an address on the bottle. At least to see your place of commerce.
Got it. All right, so you can go ahead and try it without it.
Phone number.
You want to try it without it?
There's an email. Yes.
All right. So let's see. Is it coming out?
Nope. But it looks like it will. Oh, it's on the side. Okay.
Maybe it is. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It smells lemony, or you have lemon?
You got it?
Put mine in there.
Okay.
How long does it last unrefrigerated?
Like 6 months. I just put 6 months in terms of anything, any type of storage. It's stored properly inside of glycerin, according to FDA standards. But yeah, 6 months inside the fridge.
And you said this is beneficial for diabetic individuals?
Yeah, anybody. Yeah, it doesn't. There's
And
no.
you tested it on the diabetes.
Lemon water, and then you pour the.
Yeah.
I did test it. And you tested it with diabetic patients?
No, it's already been tested. It's already been. I haven't done anything but provide it for. It's already been. It's already out there in the industry. What I'm doing is making a concentrate for the average consumer. So it's already been tested. It's already regarded as safe. No side effects. It's like blood sugar or anything like that. Super sweet.
Okay.
Yeah.
That closes it up. Let's dig in. Thank you so
You don't
much.
need that much, brother. I promise you.
Oh,
Yeah, you definitely don't need that much.
this is bounce off the walls.
That's right.
Well, no, it's not